If you want to hear what palettes give me the spring feels, then stick around. Hi there, it's Hélène, and yes, I want to talk about some palettes that give me spring feels, that give me that kind of joy to play with softer but still maybe a little edgy colors. And I was looking through my collection and I came across a few palettes that I thought, geez, this fits this time of year. And this idea just turned into a video as I was looking at my palettes through that lens. And I know that some of these may be old favorites in your collection just because they span a number of years. So I hope that maybe this video will inspire you to dust off one of those springy palettes in your collection and play around with them. I would love to hear if it does, and if so, which palette that is. Or set of palettes, that'd be even better. So let's go. I have them all out in no particular order. And yeah, we'll get into it. And I think we're going to ease into it with a few that may very well be favorites for folks already. I'm going to go with this one. It just feels right, and it's the Naked 3. And the Naked 3 I thought of because I just recently did a look, first impressions with the Naked Cherry. I'll put it right there. And I do reference the Naked 3 in that video. And for me, it's the Frosty Pinks, more on this end of the palette, that I feel compelled to use, probably along with that Dusty Rose. It just feels springy to me. I write these two right there. They call to me. So that's Buzz and Trick. And then Dust up here, very, very pretty. As far as doing the inner to 2/3 of the lid as part of a spring look, I like the texture of those eyeshadows, and I like the effect on the eye. And the whole palette itself, they're softer colors, and yeah, I like the palette and will probably be using it for a look sooner than later, given the time of year. And I like the following one for a similar reason, but it came out sort of as a late fall Christmas palette. But to me, the color story does go with spring. And it is this one, which is the Stila Happy Hour palette. And if you take a look at the glitters, I think that you'll agree, it's so blingy. I think that you'll agree that this section right here really speaks spring to me. And these particularly, I want to use pretty badly. And I think that these two mattes will go really well with them. So I would keep it very, very light, soft. I have used this glitter for sure, and this one, but I'm interested, intrigued, whatever you would like to call it. I'm really interested in this one right here, which is Highball. I'm interested in Highball. But this whole section, like I said, just gives me impressions of spring. And when I think of this palette, I do tend to think of those colors, along with the blue and the gold. But that's probably because they're such a typical pairing in a glitter type palette. And if you've been wondering about the Stila Happy Hour, it's very, very glittery. So you need to like glitter for this palette, which I do like. So it works for me. But yes, I do want to do a spring look with this palette. Now, I got inspiration from a few palettes to do this video, and this is another one where spring kind of came to mind right away. And I have swatched this palette pretty recently. It's a very new addition to my collection. And it is I don't want to lose the brush. It is the Carly Bible palette. And I think you can see why. If you look at the top row, these guys really give me the spring vibes, and so does this one right here. I just think it's a very nice palette for springs, and it has some decent neutrals to support a spring type look. And just in case you're not familiar, you've probably seen this this palette. You may not have known for sure based on the inside what it was, but it is the limited edition Carly Bible collab with ABH, or Anastasia Beverly Hills. And I have swatched this palette, but I haven't done a look with it yet. And I think that this is a really good time to give it a shot sooner than later. And out of all of them, Mandala is the one that speaks to me the most. So I probably would use this one right away in a spring look. Now, I said I would start with a few old favorites, right? I showed the Naked 3, and then I went right into Stila and the Carly Bible palette. So let me finish what I thought I was starting with. So another one for spring for me is the Sweet Peach. I think it does have definite spring vibes, and this is what it looks like. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but how could we not feel like spring with these shadows right here and some of the very light ones up top? It just makes sense to bring this palette out for spring, and the smell of it too. It just all works. I mean, Nectar, Georgia, Bellini is beautiful. Bellini is a beautiful shadow to use for a springtime look. I really like this quadrant. Actually, this quadrant looks very much like my new quad of the month. If you want to see the latest video for this series, it's going to be right there. It really looks like quad of the month. It's crazy. Okay, so this set right here for sure. And all of these, of course, would be appropriate on this end. Not that there's anything inappropriate in any season. You do what you want to. But I will definitely be picking this one out for a spring look because it just, yeah, it just works. It just absolutely works. I'll stop staring at it and let's get to the next one. Okay, this one will probably surprise, and it's because the outside does not speak spring necessarily. It looks more like it would be a grungy red rusty palette. And it does have some of those shadows, but if you look at it, it's actually quite springy. They tried to make it sound badass, but really? Look at it. It's a spring palette. It's totally a spring palette. I see the majority of these shadows would look really, really nice. And I would pair just about any of them with the green. But if you look at this, this is like an Easter quad. This is another beautiful quad. No question. It would be an absolute no-brainer to do a spring type look with this palette. Easy peasy. So, and it's the quality is reasonable. Like I would put it kind of mid-range, and the shadows are very buildable. So for anybody who's kind of concerned about color, this whole series, although I realize they're discontinued, this whole series was pretty good. So if you have a friend who's decluttering makeup and they're looking to part with it, nab it, if that's your thing. Yeah, enough said. When I opened up this palette, I went, because I thought, yeah, this is springy, and I looked at the outside and I thought, you must be remembering wrong. And then I opened up the palette, I'm going, oh yeah, it's very springy. So yes, I really enjoyed the looks I came up with using this palette, and it creates, sure, it can create more edgy looks, but it creates some beautiful soft looks. Speaking of edgy, this one has edgy packaging. But there are 3 shadows in here that really make me think of creating a softer look. And it's a Pat McGrath palette. And it's these 3 shadows. So these 2 down here on the edges, and this one. Do you see how these two would create a nice spring look? I think that the blue and the gold, kind of the same as the Stila Happy Hour, the blue and the gold just make it so much more bold looking. But really, when you think about it, there are some softer shades. Like using this one and this one as a two shadow look would be so nice and soft and, well, kind of romantic looking too. So I'm partial to that matchup. And I do think that the duochrome peachy color and burgundy could also work together quite nicely. I was intrigued by the potential, and because I often think of that really deep purple rain color and the deep burgundy purple and the gold, let's not forget the gold. It's easy to dismiss this palette as not being able to create a nice soft airy look, but it definitely can. So I'm glad I did this exercise because I don't think that I will think of this palette quite in the same way going forward, and that's been a good thing. So I think this exercise has been good because I am thinking of this palette differently, and I think I'm going to pick it up when I want a rosy colored look, but that doesn't necessarily have to be edgy, and that's kind of a nice thing. Now this one is weird, but work with me for a second. It's the Naked Basics palette, and the reason I'm bringing this up, let me just get rid of the brush. I want you to take a look. So here's the whole palette, but I want you to take a look at the top row. To me, I can create some beautiful looks, especially with these three over here. They give me similar vibes to the Naked 3 from that perspective, and I think that it would, yeah, do a nice soft, more on the monochromatic side of things, but I think that the look would be really nice, and I'm surprised. I think I have done a look like that with this palette. There are shadows that have definitely received some use, but it's really as I looked through my collection that I guess you could say I have an appreciation for looking at the Naked Basics, Naked Ultimate Basics a little bit differently by just looking at parts of the palette as opposed to having to look at all 12. Because to me, my default is, oh, I need a random matte. I'll go into this palette because it's a very good companion palette to shimmers. But it also is, by all means, it also is a pretty strong standalone palette when we're looking at specific combinations. We're halfway there, and I think I have a fun one for the halfway mark. And it is the Juvia's Place Douce palette, douce, which means soft in French. And definitely some very soft colors in here. And the mint green came to mind, as well as this beautiful pink for a spring look. And, well, really, look at this quadrant right here. Isn't that nice? It's a beautiful palette, and I think that it inspires the thinking of greenery and the newest flowers of the season, and just this nice bubbly weather that we are having a chance to experience now, and it's great. I think it's lifting a lot of people's moods and spirits, and I think this palette is super appropriate for this time of year, no question. Again, not that a palette is inappropriate at any point. We can do what we want with our shadows, and I am definitely not sporting a spring look, so yeah. We talked about the Stila Happy Hour, and I want to talk about the Stila Blue Realm now. So this is another palette that I felt like gave me some spring vibes. And what I want you to do is, it's very blingy, so hopefully I can show you this way. Just ignore the blue and the gold for a minute. Just take a look at the rest of the palette. Do you see what I'm saying? It has that beautiful mauve, two very amazing, let me see if I can show you the other way, two pretty amazing shiny shades, shimmer shades and two nice mattes that definitely make me think, give me a spring vibe. And shamefully, this is a palette that I ended up focusing on Happy Hour, and I did not focus on this one, and I have to do first impressions on this one, and it's yeah. Don't come for me. I said it's shameful. I'm owning it. And I think that out of all of the palettes, this is probably the one that I need to use first, because I should have played around with it much sooner. And it's 6 shadows. There's nothing intimidating about this palette. So why I haven't used it yet, I don't have an answer for you. It's very, very strange. But yes, I do definitely get the spring feels with this one. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to leave it on my counter, and I vow to use it very shortly. Next one is a palette that I have used several times, and it is the Buxom Dolly's Wild Side palette. And I've actually got one shadow that's swapped out with another palette here, so it's not exactly Dolly's Wild Side, but most of the shadows are. I really enjoy this palette. As a matter of fact, I enjoy Buxom shadows in general, and I do want to get more use out of this palette, so I am likely to dig into it very shortly after the Stila palette. But if you have the Buxom Dolly's Wild Side, I highly recommend, if you haven't used it in a while, to dust it off and give it a shot, because the Buxom shadows are really good. And I really hope that the recent Buxom palette that they just released is as good as their traditional, traditionally panned shadows. You know, these are the interchangeable shadows, so you can pull from the side of a palette. You can pull the tray out and swap them out, which is just, I love the concept, and I really enjoy the product itself. We have 4 more to go. I'm going to start the last 4. Now, this is probably the least known, and we're going to get into the most known. So least known would probably be the Spectral palette by Linda Hallberg. She is a Swedish makeup artist and brand owner, and this is what the palette looks like. And it's all pastels. And so, of course, it makes me think of springtime. Particularly, what makes me think of springtime is all but those 2 shadows. So these 2 in the corner, no, but everything else really gives me the sense of being able to create some soft, pretty looks. Well, actually, let me change my mind. I'm going to say these 2, because I think that the aubergine color is good for deepening. So this is the area that I'm mostly thinking about for springtime. Not that I have anything against the blue. The blue is quite a beautiful transformer shade. And this, of course, can amp it up for if you're trying to do a pastel-y evening sultry look. We all can do whatever it is we want with a palette. But yeah, I would not be able to think of a springtime look without thinking of the Spectral palette. Now this is older, but I don't see this one decluttered a whole lot, so I'm expecting a few people have this in their collection. This is the Pastel Goth from Kat Von D, or KVD Vegan Beauty now, which makes me feel like I can take out all of my KVD products now and use them on camera without getting chastised. Not that I did. I just, somehow you just back off of some stuff just because, you know? But look at this pastel set, and it is kind of a unique assortment for pastel colors. And the only one that I'm kind of going, is it a pastel really? Except for, of course, the white, which you can use to transform other colors. To me, Dagger and Skull, I consider more like transformer shades because it's like a gray and a white. But out of all the pastels, I'm looking at this one kind of going, a little bright for a pastel. but I can see why, because a yellow doesn't show up as intense as it might look in the pan, and so it is of course lighter on the eye because there's a bit of a white base to it. I do like all of the colors in this palette, and I think it would be hard to argue that this doesn't look like a spring palette. It definitely does. A nice pastel rainbow. Okay, two more. Now I don't expect a lot of people have this one, but I expect a lot of people have the last one I'm going to talk about. And these are not standalone palettes. These are topper palettes that come to mind. Well, one of them you could say is a palette that you can use on its own, but definitely not this one. So this is the Jouer Ultra Foil palette. And it doesn't, I don't remember the name of it. Ultra Foil palette, okay. And there are a few colors in here that I would see really nicely acting as toppers, namely this one and this one for a spring look. So it's not a standalone palette, maybe even this one. It's not a standalone palette, but the toppers in here, I had it come to mind pretty quick just because they're impactful, but they're also soft, and so they would just amp up a look. If you're doing, for example, if you took the Naked Basics, that aubergine and the two more pinky colors, and then you topped it off with this one, it would look beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So yeah, if you haven't used this one in a while, it can definitely complement a soft look, so just saying. And finally, this one was an easy pull from my collection, and it is the Tarte Make Believe in Yourself. And if we take a look at the color scheme, I mean, the palette itself is set up in a flower formation, right? And there is a lot in here that gives spring vibes, no question, and a highlighter in the center. And it is technically a standalone palette because it does have this one matte on the edge here. But to me, I use it as an inner to 2/3 of the lid topper to finish up a look that I've created. And another reason for it to be a nice spring palette, similar to the Sweet Peach, is it has a wonderful vanilla scent to it. So if you have not pulled this palette out of your collection, if you haven't done that in a while, I recommend it. And as a matter of fact, any palette that has those soft, shimmery or metallic shades, just no matter what you have as your base makeup that you've chosen out of any palette that you have, I think that little accent of a peachy pink or a frosty pink just looks really nice on the inner to 2/3 of the lid. A mint green, same thing. A soft purple or lilac, all of those would look good. As a matter of fact, I would say that my favorites out of here would probably be, I've got three. Marvel. This is not Mystic, okay. Marvel, Fairy, and Mystic. Yeah, those would be the three that I would particularly go for. This one, and this one. I hope I ended on a high note for a number of you. Like I said, there are a lot of other palettes that will have this kind of topper option. And I call it topper just because I would probably have something underneath these, although they are opaque enough that they stand on their own on a naked lid, which would work just fine. So there were the 14 palettes that gave me spring vibes that I just pulled out of my collection for this video. Let me know what your favorite go-to spring, early summer palettes are. I would love to hear. And do you think any of the palettes were real winners? Did you think that there were any palettes that just didn't really give you that vibe? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And with that, I will say thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it every single time. and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. But for now, take care.